Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with a remarkable guest. Whether you're joining us from the first time or you're a regular listener, we're so glad you're here. Our goal is to bring you closer to the innovative leaders and thinkers shaping our future. And today I am thrilled to welcome Dallas Atkinson. She is the Director of Programs at the HillVets Foundation, a veteran community advocate, and a military spouse. So welcome to Tipping Spears, Dallas.
Thanks so much, Hannah. I'm so happy to be with you.
So can you tell us where your story begins?
Sure. We have been a part of the military community for a decade plus now. My husband's active duty, and I met him in a coffee shop in my 30s. So I would truly say that is where my story begins. I really didn't have any introduction to the military lifestyle before that. I just met a handsome man in a coffee shop. I married him very quickly at a courthouse, like many military spouses do. And really, you know, as again, we all can relate to, life started very, very quickly from there. So, you know, we've made a lot of moves and we've lived a lot of wonderful places. We've had great experiences, and all of it has really contributed for me to my professional journey. So I'm grateful for all of the stops along the way and what I was able to pick up. But yeah, started in a coffee shop with a handsome Green Beret, you know, I don't know how many, 12, 13 years ago now. And we came to DC on our 10th move in 10 years. So moving it around quite a bit, landed here in Northern Virginia, and we love it. So we'll retire here. And of course, being in DC is what also brought me to HillVets.
So today you're the Director of Programs at HillVets. Can you tell us a little bit about what HillVets does and some of the programs that they provide?
Yeah, I'd love to. So HillVets is an incredible organization founded by a Navy veteran many years ago who came to DC and, you know, after his service and after deployments had a real lived experience. He was ready to share and he was ready to advocate and he was ready to go to Capitol Hill and use that voice and use those experiences. And he found that really hard to do. A lot of barriers in the way for a veteran to leave service and enter into a space of advocacy, policy, politics, governance. There's a lot of barriers, particularly here in DC, housing. So fast forward many years as that is our founder and CEO, his name is Justin Brown, as he got settled and did some really cool things professionally, he recognized that there was a real need for the veteran community, for both camaraderie, for just the simple sake of community, which is really where HillVets started, just wanting people to be together and share lived experiences together, carry them together. That's where it started. But then it evolved into creating real programs that are pathways for our military community to explore a life in politics, policy, governance, advocacy. You know, most often Capitol Hill is where we're focused on putting those military connected individuals because we believe in representation, of course. So that's our HillVet Fellowship program, and that is really the heart of who we are at HillVets, is creating a space where we can place the voice of a veteran or a military spouse in a congressional office where we know they'll be heard and valued, and that they'll contribute in real meaningful ways, and get really exciting, rare exposure to the policy process that they wouldn't probably otherwise, you know, have an opportunity for. So, you know, starting from just a young sailor moving to DC, recognizing all of the ways that our veteran community could be more active and more prominent and more connected. And then, 15 years later, we are really the military connected community in DC, is what we really like to say, that through our fellowship or through our leadership development program, through our community events, in one way or another, we are striving to really be an available resource to the military connected community as they use their voice.
Yeah, well, y'all, I love that description of kind of, the encompassing programs and support y'all provide. Y'all really provide access. You open doors that otherwise, very likely would not have been available or open for so many people. I think that's just so commendable that you and, the HillVets team do this. And I think it's something that just really makes has a big impact. Just having, some network support, some opportunities, some access, those can be massive barriers, and y'all really kind of paved the way for overcoming that. So can you tell us a little bit about how being a military spouse impacted, your career? When you were talking about like how you got married, I'm also courthouse wedding, like on a 48-hour leave pass. Yeah, so I was having memories.
Was it a 3-day weekend?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah, and we're, you just take what you can get. So we didn't even, there was a whole line of military couples. It was in the peak of the war. So it's like a whole line of military couples all just getting married. And so I know from just what my own experiences that military life is very different than civilian life. And when I, on a 3-day weekend, got married, I was not aware of the impacts professionally of, being married to someone in the service. And so that for me was new. Can you tell us a little bit about how it impacted you and kind of your career and how you navigated that?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to. So, as I mentioned, I didn't have a lot of exposure. I didn't really have any to both the service member and what is required of them, certainly not what is required of the family connected to the service member. So, for me professionally, I will say that I saw many of my friends through those years who were at a different place professionally really struggle to navigate the PCS schedule and the childcare availability and so many of the things that we advocate for and we want to improve because we know that there are barriers for spouses' employment. But, for me, I had a little bit of a different journey, interesting journey, because Pete and I met when we were older. Our family started right away and his deployments started right away. So those first really 3 to 5 years of our marriage were really kind of that growing stage of your family, and also just fraught with deployments, 300 plus days a year. And similar to so many. So I only mention that to say that, at that time for me and at that stage in life, I really wasn't focused on how this was going to add up or what I was going to do on the other side of this, or, all of those things that I think really stress the military spouse heart out. I really tried in those years to be very present in what I was doing and be very involved in the things that I cared about. And what happened for me was that those things all added up to a really cool sort of resume that is perfect for the work that I do. So, you asked me about struggles, and I don't mean not to answer that directly, but I would say that for me, it wasn't a hardship those years. We did move, about every year for about a decade, and There was certainly conversations about the time that I would re-enter the workforce, but for so many of those years, it just wasn't the time. It just wasn't possible. And so, that could have been frustrating for me, but it really wasn't, because we were in the investment years of Pete's career at that stage, and we knew what it was going to take from us. And we agreed on two things when we got married. As a military family, we wanted to always be together. We could be together. So if that looked like us living in a Marriott with a newborn in, Virginia Beach while Pete was in training for 4 months, we did that because we were together and that was better. And then the second thing to that was that we always wanted to be perceived as a happy and healthy military family. We wanted our communities and our neighbors to really experience what military service could be like for a family that really loved it and was really dedicated to enjoying it. And we felt really successful in many of those years in doing those things. That was our, I would say our greatest success through many years. And then, kind of fast forward again, we arrived in DC, and, I really believe you can't miss what's for you. My experience back into the work world was in corporate America. I was with Lululemon. I had a dream job, dream company from their, you know, e- equitable pay policies that have been
Mhm.
intact for 15 years before it was trendy, right? Like they're an amazing company, to just like the work they do in communities. And leaving Lululemon, I knew that I wanted to focus on the military family in a real intentional way, and wanted to look at the VSO landscape. And all of that kind of came to fruition for us when we moved to DC and kind of got to the heart of where everything happens.
Yeah. Well, I love how you described not knowing how it would all add up, and
Yeah.
then kind of how it all came together. Because remember the first time I met you and was talking with you, my kind of one of the takeaways was, oh my gosh, Dallas understands. Dallas understands like what military life is and some of these
Yeah.
things. And we laugh, but Dallas, that is like not the norm. A lot of people don't get it. And I think it's just really beautiful how
That's right.
you how you were so, you and your husband so committed kind of to this life, making it a success, and that not knowing what it was going to be on the, kind of 13 years, 12 years down the road, but
Yeah.
yet how it has all kind of come together. I think it's just such an asset and such a strength that you have those insights. Um,
You. I
so
would, if I could add there, I would add just a word of encouragement there for military spouses, is that, you don't have to stress about what is in front of you at the time, right? Do the best with what you have, where you're at. Do the things that you love, right? If that's volunteering for your FRG, if that's like, and that doesn't have to be volunteer work, just continue to be active in the things that you love, but don't worry about the end result, because everything does really work together in ways that would surprise you. Just sort of have faith in the process and being happy with the kind of existing situation. And I think that eventually, if you're strategic, those things can add up still into a very fulfilling career.
yeah, well, you really kind of plant those seeds, right?
Yeah.
Not sure what's going to come up or when it's going to come up, but
Yeah.
so was there a particular event or person or program that kind of served as a catalyst for your career journey?
You know, there are several individuals in what I would call the VSO space, veteran service organizations, or MSOs, really. Um, Having only personal experience to the resources available to military families for the last decade. So, of course, I've gone to a Blue Star Families Coffee. an amazing resource for people when they first move to a city and don't know anyone. You can go meet other spouses for a coffee, and they're really local to you. Wonderful. The Military Spouse Advisory Network, some of these wonderful organizations that I had already been involved in from a personal standpoint for many, many years, coming to DC gave me the chance to really be in the heart of all of that work. So if you're asking about, the combination of those who sort of inspire me, I'm really lucky because I'm in a city full of incredible leaders. So, that's Kathy at Blue Star Families. That's our own founder, Justin, here at HillVets. That's, so many of the individuals that I'm so lucky to kind of be in the back of the room with these days and just get to absorb the way that they lead and, more specifically, the way that they focus on solutions for our military community, the way that they are really, listening, asking the right questions, listening, acting upon those answers, really putting into place what I think we need to ensure that our military community stays really strong from that, security standpoint, but also for the sake of future generations of service members, right? So, really lucky. My answer to inspired leaders is that they surround me, I feel like, in DC.
Yeah, you're really in the heartbeat of
Yeah,
policy and
yeah,
yeah.
it's so fun.
So what skills or mindsets, do you think or have you found helpful in terms of being successful?
Let's see. It depends on how you determine success. So for me, it's quite simple. Um, it's really about being joyful, finding joy, and therefore sort of an overall sense of happiness, gratitude. That's been most important for me personally. It's been most important for us and our family. So it's most important for me, professionally as well. Um, I think that really focusing on the good, and focusing on the ways that you can make an impact. It's so easy to get frustrated and bogged down by issues and frustrations facing our community, facing our service members. But by really focusing on having a positive perspective, then we get disciplined to focus on how we can make the change, right? Like, what can we do to make a difference? Where's the best impact? So focusing on being happy, focusing on being positive, and then focusing on really how to make the most impact, how to be focused on the changes that we need, I think would be probably the things that I have focused on.
Yeah, that's a great approach, Dallas. Can you tell us kind of what are some of the top challenges or topics that you think or you see, kind of in your work that are currently impacting the modern military and veteran community?
Yes. Not only would I love to mention them, but I'll tell you, a couple of great resources. Um, the Blue Star Family Survey, the Military Family Quality of Life Survey that they publish every year is a really great snapshot of, again, an organization asking the right questions and then capturing the answers, and then really the ability to put that into policy recommendations that are going to directly affect our families. So they just had a huge success with the Military Quality of Life Bill, and that was largely based on the research that comes out of this survey. So, consistently those things are childcare, access to childcare. Um, that's a top frustration and pain for military families. It then, of course, affects military spouse employment or unemployment, which is still very much an issue for our community because it's just a percentage. It's at a percentage that hasn't moved in 10 years. Um, and that's kind of like the conundrum that many organizations are trying to tackle from different ways. There's no right answer for that. I think there's a lot of organizations that are doing really great work. Military spouse employment for sure. And then, of course, we have those really serious issues facing our service members, and, our suicide rates that have climbed and things like that continue to just be worrisome for those who want to make sure that those who have served are truly cared for after their service. So those are a few of the top issues.
Yeah, well, the surveys you mentioned are 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 an incredibly insightful, and at least for me, sometimes
They really are.
almost painful, to see this come out. Because, I feel like, the data doesn't lie in terms of the pain points here. And both of those organizations do a fantastic job of getting huge sample, huge survey base.
Yeah, they do.
And it is just, it's kind of like putting your finger on the pulse of these are the pain points. This is what is impacting whether people re-up a contract, whether they stay in, whether they're going to recommend military service to their kids or their
That's
family
exactly it.
members. And
Exactly
yeah,
it.
it's so insightful. So, kind of in the context of national security, the role that military spouses and families play is rarely, if ever, discussed. So, I would love to get your thoughts on kind of what impact, do military spouses or families have in national security in terms of kind of the critical nature of, this role, this support of the service member.
I excuse me. Yeah, I think particularly for those of us who are in military families, it's so easy for us to draw the really very clear line
Mhm,
to service member quality of life and national security.
mhm.
Um, you know, and we do that by way of retention. We do
Yes.
that by way of recruitment, those two important numbers for us as an all volunteer force. Um, we know that if an individual can't meet sort of the basic needs of life, right? If John Smith can't pay his mortgage in North Carolina because his wife can't find childcare and thus can't work her night shift nursing at the hospital, then he is going to get out.
Yeah.
Just as simple as that. And then we multiply that by hundreds of thousands of service members who have young partners who
Mhm.
are unable to find employment. So, really for me, it's force readiness. It's both making sure that the service member is in the best state of mind and his happiness and his security within his family unit, right? That speaks
Mhm.
so much to the overall mental wellness of a service member. Um, not a surprise. Financial stress is like very stressful. It is on the top 3 list of most stressful things. And
Yeah.
so, excuse me, all of these things are working together to create this environment
Mhm.
where, the service member is going to have to make a decision. He's either
Mhm.
staying in and completely stressed out because he can't, meet the basic needs of life, um, if I could tell you the percentage, I would, but, our service members on all sorts of other, like food stipends and
Mhm.
resources and things, right? Like happens and shouldn't be the case. So he's not going to stay in. This is the point. So he's either really stressed in what he's doing, um, and ultimately is going to determine he's going to get out. So it's kind of a bit of a tangent because I really do start thinking of the individual families and the way that it so clearly affects their ability to serve, and it so clearly affects their ability to do this as a long-term career. And that's really frustrating because it can be a really good life. And we need service members who dedicate a career of service. And a lot of things have to happen in order for that to be possible for a family to survive it. But, to your question, national security becomes an issue when our service members don't stay in, or when we can't recruit another generation of them to serve because they, for a lot of reasons, maybe they didn't
Yeah.
see a happy family in their communities. Maybe they weren't exposed to generations of service members, whatever that may be.
Yeah, no, those are great, great points. I think it just really hits on kind of the heart and soul of those decisions, the factors that are going into those decisions. I remember this was back before the pandemic. Military Family Advisory Network came out, their survey came out, and it was at the time, it was over 20% of service members, military families experiencing food insecurity. And this was like crazy high,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
don't, there had been like a little bit of press before on that, but it was kind of like op-eds and stuff. So when the survey came out and it was like, the numbers are like large, and it was thousands and thousands of people that had responded, and they can't afford meat, and they can't afford, consistent food for their families. I remember when the news started coming out on that, and I would talk to civilians, so people that were not military connected, and they were shocked. They're like, that can't be true. Of course we pay service members enough for, them to have meat at their supper table with their family. And it was like, no, they don't. And it was the shock on so many people's face that
Yeah.
I'll just never forget. And it was like, we were just kind of in this world at the time. It was just, the military community, the longest war in American history is like, we're just in this kind of bubble trying to survive. And, people weren't aware that basic needs weren't being met. And, it does have just such an impact on kind of the future of that service member's career. And then, the people that they know, folks aren't going to
Yeah.
recommend
That's it.
Yeah. Uh, so what career advice do you have for kind of the next generation of professionals interested, or anyone, I guess, interested in working in the military and veteran kind of nonprofit space?
Hmm. Well, I landed here just by a combination of luck and love for our service members and their families. So I'm not sure I have strategies on how to get involved in like the non-for-profit world. Often I find in most of my colleagues that our love of something or someone, or our drive to protect something or someone has driven us into these roles. They wouldn't have been the roles that we would have selected for ourselves, maybe had you asked us a while ago. But what I can tell you is, those who are looking to be on Capitol Hill. So, really anyone that is interested in what a further career in policy, politics, governance could look like. Someone that wants to get experience kind of looking behind, pulling the curtain behind, looking behind the curtain, sorry, I can't talk, at how policy is made, the things that those things that we're focused on at HillVets, wanting to make sure that, I mentioned earlier, representation, and I'll go back to that because it's really important to us to know that we want to make sure that there is a veteran or military spouse voice at every table where decisions are being made. And those aren't just the conversations where a policy is being discussed about the GI Bill, it's overall. We know that our veterans and our military spouses have a unique set of qualifications and leadership skills, and we know that their voices are really valued in those spaces. The challenge, of course, is getting them connected and getting them there. So always excited to meet people and to interact with people who are curious about a career, career on Capitol Hill, a career connected to Capitol Hill, that goes back out to our VSO world and lobbying, advocacy, a lot of different organizations kind of supporting the policy engine with resources and research. So I love chatting with people about any opportunity that might exist within that world and how they might strategize to get to it. And of course, that's our focus with our HillVet Fellowship, and then of course our lead group as well.
Yeah, a lot of people they're interested in policy work. They see something, maybe they had like they themselves had a connection to, a challenging, difficult experience. They want to make this right for others, but they don't know how to get started. And so I think it's so cool, just kind of the work y'all are doing with HillVets and really, opening those doors, kind of breaking down the barriers, helping people figure out logistically like how you get there so that then their unique perspectives can kind of influence our future. That the kind of the barriers that you mentioned earlier today are all like, I mean, you're hitting the whole list of everything I've heard people bring up about, hey, I would love to get this legislative act passed, or hey, I would love to change this, but I don't know how. And so it's really neat to just kind of see y'all really, put the rubber where on the road there in terms of, facilitating this. Are there any books or resources, TED Talks, conferences that you found particularly helpful in your career journey, either, starting out or recently, that you can share or would recommend?
There are so many books and so many podcasts. And in fact, that list is ever growing because it's a question that I'm always asking other people who I also, especially podcasts, because I feel like you kind of you'll have a specific style or genre. We as our lead group, Hannah, which of course just started Leaders Eat Last. And most of us had read that in the past, but bringing it back up just to revisit. So that's definitely one I love. I love Atomic Habits. I love Smart Brevity. I'm lucky in my role because I get to work with our lead group, our leadership development cohort. We spend a year together, and through the course of the year, we do a lot of different fun professional development things. And so for me, I get to bring a lot of those resources in and make the selections on books and films and things like that. So I'm lucky to get to be the one to do that and get exposure to so many great things.
I know you're on, in DC, you're on the front lines of all the changes and things that are coming down affecting military and veteran
Yeah.
families. What kind of, as you look forward, are there any developments that you're particularly hopeful about in terms of the future of our military and veteran community? Anything that you're hoping for, or just kind of what's on your radar with that?
I appreciate the question because it's focused on what to hope for rather than, like what is on our worry list, because I think we have a long one right now. Um, a lot of things feel very uncertain right now. Certainly the professional landscape for many feels shaky. Obviously government careers feel really vulnerable
Mhm.
right now. I lost my train of thought. Hannah, ask me the question again, will you?
Yeah. So what developments are you most hopeful for in
Right.
terms of kind of the future of the military and veteran community?
Thank
Just
you.
kind of what's on your radar?
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking about how so many things were uncertain and then got
No.
distracted by that
The
feeling.
worry list.
Yeah, there's a worry list. I am hopeful that we are focused on solutions for military spouse unemployment. I hope that that stays a priority as we see a lot of other um, marginalized groups become less of a priority. Um, you know, a lot of military spouse resources and veteran resources fall under DE&I as an umbrella.
Mhm.
And so that's going to become challenging for our community. And I didn't want to focus on the negative, but it really does bring me back to what I am hopeful for, which is that we will stay the course,
Mhm.
that we can continue to advocate for our military community as being really unique and having a unique lived experience that has really warranted, some of the accommodations that our communities worked really hard for, like, positions that are work from, remote work
Yeah.
and things like that. So, but I'm hopeful. There's so many organizations that are working so hard on those issues that we already talked about. What the data is showing us is most difficult on our military families. And I'm hopeful that we're going to make an impact on those things. And I know that to be true because we've already seen, even with the last Military Quality of Life Act,
Mhm.
out of the policy recommendations, they were able to get, I think, 21 of 23 passed. So they worked really, really hard and got very much the majority of what was being asked for passed. And that's huge. It's a huge, huge success for our military families, for our communities, for the, young enlisted soldier that's going to get, I think it was 15-18% pay
Mhm.
increase. I mean, something really needed and significant. And I'm hoping we do that same work this year.
Yeah, no, that's really encouraging, Dallas. One thing that's always impressed me so much about kind of the military space is that the nonprofits really do work together kind of for the common good. And it's not, that's not something that you see in, kind of other like lobbying areas and sectors. And it's
Yeah.
something that I love so much about our military community, because especially during times where there's a lot of change, like we've had here recently, I feel like it doesn't matter what side of the aisle anyone's kind of where they spend most of their time, they will work together. And I think it's just really
Yeah.
a beautiful, um, it's kind of a beautiful experience in that, and kind of a reminder of kind of what does bind us, together. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and yeah, well, that's insightful to have your take from the trenches there in DC
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah. I am hopeful. I think, yeah, absolutely.
So just kind of as we wrap up, do you have any kind of final thoughts or advice that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, this has been really fun. So nice to chat with you, Hannah. Like, if we were just at an event or something, I would love to just leave everyone an invitation to be a part of what we're doing, the military connected community. If you've served, if you've loved someone who has served, if you care deeply for the community of those who have served, whatever that looks like. We have a variety of different resources, but ultimately we are a community, and we want to be a community, that's open and available to be a resource when needed. So fellowships, events, our leadership group, we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome at those things and really gets connected to the ways in which we can be a conduit for those in DC looking for opportunities, looking to, evolve their policy voice or their advocacy skills. There's so many ways that we can truly serve the community of service members and their families here. I would just love to be connected.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for all that you do, through HillVets and for our military community. And thanks
Yeah.
for sharing your insights today. Your contributions definitely make a major impact. I can't recommend HillVets enough. I think y'all are doing a great job. So
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. Well, it's been really fun to chat with you. I'm afraid my ADHD really showed up in force on this rainy day in DC. I was hoping I could keep it at bay, but who knows? We'll see in the after.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Tipping Spheres with Hannah Becker. We hope this conversation sparked new ideas and challenged the way you think about our future. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll catch you next time with another exciting guest.